And
Hello and welcome to World Sand Project. I'm Shelley Carney.
and I'm Toby Younis. If you saw us sign on Gypsy's Kiss, ignore it. Hey, today we're going to talk about a sand sample from San Clemente Beach, California. So stick with us. So thanks for joining us today. And Shelley, it's nice to have you back in town.
Thank you.
Nice to have my partner back around. That's
Yeah.
always good. So I do want to cover a couple of things before we get started with our project. By the way, the sand sample we're discussing today came to us from a gentleman whose name is Oscar Rodriguez, and I asked Oscar if he wanted to call in to text me his phone number. Oscar, if you're watching now, that still stands. If you'd like us to call you to discuss the San Clemente State Beach and the photographs that you sent us, just text your phone number to 202. 815-1171, and we'll give you a call later in the show. So today's show won't go longer than 45 minutes because we need to get to Shelley's show at the softer side at
Busy.
4 o'clock. So it's a busy day for us today, kind of catching up. I do want to mention a couple of things. So you will hear me mention almost in every show a gentleman whose name is Vince Beiser. Vince is a journalist, but back in 2015 or 16, he started covering the problem with sand mining, sand mafia, et cetera, et cetera. And since then, he's been very prolific in terms of TED Talks, which we've included on the playlist. If you look at our playlist on World Sand Project, you'll see several interviews, presentations, et cetera, with Vince. He's also, of course, officially written the book on the topic. This is it. The story of sand and how it transforms civilization, and it's entitled The World in a Grain. I found this on abebooks.com, which is the used book library, and it was around $15. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that he recently published, now, in the description box below, you're going to see a couple of long-form reports, one from the World Wildlife Foundation and the other from the United Nations. One of them is around 70 pages long. The other is around 170 pages long. I have printed those out, and I've started reading them. But if you want a nice summary in all of this, Vince just published, Mr. Beiser just published an article on behalf of the BBC Future, and it's entitled Why the World is Running Out of Sand. It's a short form, and I'll put the link. I didn't before I started the show today, but I'll put the link to that particular article in the description box below before YouTube processes it, so you'll have access to that. And I wanted to thank our viewer, Eric Schmidt, for sharing that link with us. And then the last thing I wanted you to know is you very graciously are sending us samples of sand. Thank you for that. This one is from Lisa Smith, and we'll be taking a look at this next week. And this sand is from Corona del Mar in California. And let me see if I got... Oh, she also sent us... Is it Corona del Mar? Did I get that right? No, that's wrong. Lisa is not Corona del Mar.
You wrote on
I
there.
wrote it on there, but that's Heidi. So, Lisa, I will have that. Actually, let me see what she says in here. 2 samples of sand. Completely wrong here, boys and girls. Here are 2 samples of sand. As I promised, I do have to tell you that we enjoyed the time spent collecting them. Wow, a little bit of outdoorsy stuff. The first is from Columbia River, Washington side at Mayhill State Park, and the second is John Day River at LePage Park, both along the Columbia. So those are the first northwestern river samples. You know that we did a show a couple of weeks ago on the Rio Grande River near Bernalillo. So that's actually. So I'm doing these in the order that they arrive, and so Lisa's will be next week. This one is from Heidi Hill, and Heidi is the one that sent the sand sample from Corona del Mar Beach at Newport Beach, California. And she sent us a very nice little bottle,
Like a spice jar or
yeah,
something.
like a spice jar. So. So we'll do that. And then the last one that we have in waiting is another really interesting one. This came from Andy Giles, and he sent it from the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And the Pine Barrens are an interesting area because they are very, very sandy, but they're covered with pines and junipers and a lot of coniferous style trees. So that's a couple of weeks off as well. So that catches us up on everything that we've been doing. So let's go over, and again, Oscar, if you are watching this, please text your phone number to 202 815-1171, and I'll call you later in the show, or we can call. And then actually what I'm going to do is, as I open up the sand in the microscope, I'll open up the phone line so that if you guys have any questions, we'll be able to answer that for you as best we can. But before I do that,
Housekeeping, you want towels?
let me do a little housekeeping, because you guys have heard that before. First of all, like our video. YouTube likes it when you like our videos, and we hope that some of the people that are interested in this problem like it when you like our videos. Share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates, people that you think might be interested in the
Hey,
environment.
show it to them while you were hanging out at Thanksgiving. Why
Yeah,
not?
good one. That would
Get
be good.
everybody in on the whole
Right.
knowledge train here.
So yeah, just play it on your big TV in between football games or
Yeah,
something.
there you go.
And share it with the entirety of your social networks. And last but not least, if you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. This is a very different channel for us. We feel it meets our needs for practicing environmental activism. It's a good topic, and it's a very photogenic topic, which I really enjoy. So please
I
subscribe.
talked about it to people at my conference. I said, we have all these YouTube channels, and they said, what are they about? So, and I mentioned, and when I got to the one on sand, they're just like, what? And
Yeah.
I told them about the shortage and the sand mafia, and they were like, I did not
Had
know
nobody,
that.
no, that's kind of where it is.
So, yeah, and
nobody's
educate
actually
your
heard about it.
friends.
Yeah, it'd be great to educate your friends. We do have a problem. As I've said in the past, sand is the most in danger solid resource behind air and water. And we're running out of it. We're using it faster than the planet has the ability to replenish it. And I'm going to explain why as we go through these pictures. So let me slide over to the window shot. And this is the album. I will put the link to this album. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll put the link to all our albums. They're on Google Photos, and I'll put that link in the description box below. So if you want to see any of our albums, so we have several up there. Let me see what it looks like when you get there. So, and I've the album cover on each one of them is a sample of each of the sand stories that we've done thus far. So today we've got sample 004 at San Clemente State Beach, San Clemente, California in the USA. And this sample was collected by Oscar Rodriguez. And as you can see, for those of you that either have lived in California or have studied California or have visited California, or like my friend Janet and I have actually done films about the beaches in California. San Clemente is one of California's protected beaches. California has something called Proposition 20, and it's the California Coastal Protection Act. And basically it means that all the California coast is open to the public. There is one spot up north that was owned by a developer that they still owned. It's a small stretch of beach that you can't get to, the public can't get to, although you can get to either side of it. But everything else in California is open beaches. And people that are buying and building houses can only build, they have to build a certain distance back from the high tide mark. And so that makes it available. And you can see there's all kinds of access. San Clemente is one of those areas, one of those state beaches that also has a pier. And people walk along the pier. People fish off the pier. It's not the only one in San Clemente. There's a smaller one. But again, if you ever get to visit the area, make sure you go to the beach. It's a beautiful beach. And it's always busy. But it's clean and it's fun. And there's lots of people there. It also has a like a bike path along the beach, a strand, and I recently found out why they call it a strand. The reason is that at high tide, as the high tide comes in and brings various life forms, and whether they're seaweed or things like that, they're stranded on the beach.
Oh.
So that's why they call it the strand. I've used that word, pretty much most of my life, because we had one in Ocean City, and it was called the Strand. And we thought it was just a way to describe the walk. It's because the high tide will strand some, ocean objects. Sometimes, of course, it's garbage, but other times it's seaweed and other things. That's why it's called the Strand. So,
I did not know that either.
So that's what it looks like, overview, and I can tell from the photographs that Oscar took the photographs from right around this area here, and we'll go through those right now. So let's take a look at the photos. This is the first one. Now, it looked like what he did was he went to the evening. Now you can see this is the west coast, and the rocks are highlighted on the ocean side of the image. So it looks like it was late in the evening when he was collecting it, but you can see it's a beautiful California beach, very protective. That's the road nearby. I'm going to guess those guys are probably clamming because it looks like they're digging in right at the high water line for that level of tide. And this is a view, as I said, towards what would be the south. And there is the San Clemente State Pier, or the pier that we saw earlier. And you can see it stretches out pretty far out into the ocean. But a lot of those piers, Santa Monica, Newport Beach, a lot of them have piers that stretch out into the ocean. And like I said, it's great for fishermen. You can go there any day of the week, and there's going to be guys fishing off the pier for all kinds of fish and crabs. Is that the person walking? Oh, I was going to say, it looks like they're riding a horse. So it looks like it got dark a little bit early, and you can see this is where he actually collected that dry sand that he sent us, and that would be facing north. And I didn't get the part of the map that showed what city that was, but San Clemente, you can see curves around as we go. Curves around, right? So this is curving around to the northwest. And if you take a picture from here north, you're going to see another city up there. And I don't know enough about California. I guess I could look it up in the map as we do this. So.
Well, a fan said it's also just north of the San Onofre nuclear power plant and Camp Pendleton Marine Base.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Fan. And then this is the last one, and I think this is one of the prettiest, as he had the sand in the foreground, and this is probably the what they call the first dune that is set up at where water's edge and high tide, and then the winds blow over this dune. That's, you can see the result of the wind blowing. It looks like that's where you got the sand. And
they
then,
also
of course,
said north of San Clemente is Dana Point.
Oh, nice. Maybe that was what we saw in the. Right there. So it looks like that would be Dana Point right there in the lights there. And then, of course, this is again facing south and east from where Oscar collected the sand. And that would be, again, the San Clemente Pier, but this time it's lighted. And it's always kind of nice. By this time of the evening, it's getting cool, and the wind is blowing off the water. And so you're going to have to wear at least a sweater. But it is very peaceful. When you take that walk
what
out
we
towards the
need?
pier.
We need some surf background sounds that
While
we
we're
can
doing
play
this?
while we're, while you're describing the surf area.
I'll do that.
And then we can get some river ones when we do
When
the
we
rivers.
do the rivers? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can get some of those. Okay, well, let's take a look at the sand. The first thing I wanted to do was compare this particular sample. As I process them, I dry them out. Sometimes they're wet, as the ones from the Columbia River. This one was a little bit wet, so I dry them out. And then I place them in these sample bottles, and I wanted to give you an idea of what we've collected thus far from friends and viewers who have sent us these samples. This is the one that William Hada sent us, and it came from Connecticut, from Wakefield State Park. And then this is my sample that I collected from the Rio Grande River near Bernalillo. And you can see it's got more color to it. This is a very light color. It's got more color to it. This
and
is
it looks like bigger rocks in
yeah,
the center.
definitely bigger. And what I've read, and I'm going to show you another book here in just a minute that's been very helpful for me. This is the sample that Doug Carver sent us from the south shore of Prince Edward Island in Canada, and you can see it has that very reddish look, and we can see that in the stones. And this is the one that we received today from Oscar Rodriguez at San Clemente State Park, and you can see it looks very light colored, very in comparison to the others, and you can tell as I look at it under the microscope that it very very much has more not granite but quartz crystals in it. They again the ones that look like little diamonds in it. So that just gives you an idea of the various sands. We'll see some more if we look at the one that Lisa sent us from. I think this is, if I haven't confused the two.
Coronado or something. It started with a C.
Corona del Mar.
No, that was Heidi's. Remember, you put the wrong thing on here.
Right. So here's the one from.
You need to put us in the big screen.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, this is the sample from the Columbia River, and you can see it's got a completely different color to it. And one of the things that I've learned is the color in the sand along the continental beaches, that is, beaches that are associated with a continent, in this case North America. Those beaches usually have sand that comes from the interior. Erosion of granite mountains, et cetera, while beaches that come from islands have a lot more objects that are natural and come from around the ocean. And the thing that I've discovered is that continents have a lot more granite and quartz, and islands have a lot more basalt in them. So they're because they're based on volcanic activity. And so what I've done is I've ordered a couple of samples. eBay, I think I've mentioned this before, but you can actually search for sand samples on eBay. And the one that I wanted to get was a sample of sand from a beach in Maui that is green because of the type of volcanic activity that supported it. And
There's a question in the chat room from
What is
Corey
it?
Jacobs.
Yeah.
Is sand just too complex to replicate or make from the rocks it's from?
It is not too complex, but it can take up to 200 million years to create a perfect grain of sand, right? As it's eroded from mountaintops, run into rivers, the rivers run into the ocean wave actions throw it onto the beach, then take it off, and then throw it on again. There are people looking for options to using sand in concrete, which is where most of the sand that we're consuming is going for construction purposes. There are other companies that will take larger rocks and they'll crush them into sand. Or the equivalent of sand. And what I mean by sand is a tiny little object between 0.65 millimeters and 2 millimeters in dimensions, because that's the definition, that's the size definition of sand. But the expense of crushing the rock is outweighed by the expense of moving the rock. It is expensive. It does cost to crush the rock. The problem is at about 50 miles, if your rock crushing location is more than 50 miles from where you're going to mix the concrete, it becomes too expensive a process. So there are alternatives in Florida. A lot of the Florida beaches, if you live in Florida, we don't do it here in New Mexico. We don't collect glass for recycling. There is one location in Albuquerque that has a big bin that will collect glass. But in Florida, they do collect glass for recycling. They crush it because it's easier to crush than rock. And they put it back out in the beaches. So there are several beaches in southern Florida, including Miami and the beach that my daughter's on, Boca Raton, that use glass as a replacement for the sand that they're losing. And the problem is for those beaches is over the years, as the environment has changed, the hurricanes, the weather has gotten more dramatic, and it's taking, each time it comes in, each time one of those storms comes in, it takes more and more sand and it washes it out. And if it washes it out 3 or 4 miles into whatever bay that is, it takes 20 to 25 years to get that sand back up onto the beach. In the meantime, it's still losing sand. So one of the solutions that that Florida has used is they're crushing glass and they're putting it out in the sand. And so you think to yourself, wait a minute, I'm going to put my kid or myself on the glass. It's so crushed that it's not going to bite into you. You don't even know. You won't even be able to tell, because it's down to these very small sizes. So, so
It'd be like I was going to say a mosquito biting you, but you do feel that.
yeah, you don't know. You do feel a mosquito biting you. It's not even that.
Or an ant
you,
bite.
You would not be able to tell the difference unless somebody told you they've incorporated sand into this beach. You would not know that you were walking on crushed glass. That's how effective a process
Could
it
just
is.
play that song, feel like I'm walking on broken glass.
Now you got me thinking about that. Name the group?
Oh, I don't know the name. Who in the chat room knows the name of the group that sings "Feel Like I'm Walking on Broken Glass"?
Okay, so first we're going to start with some pictures, and I've done this at 3 levels of magnification in terms of our stereo microscope. I don't know. Can I do that? Can I show it to you without? I guess I can't. I'll take some pictures, and so this is the least. This is the lowest level of magnification. As you can see,
No, they can't.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. All right. So this is the lowest level of magnification for this sand from San Clemente, California. You can
What's
see
the
a lot
little
of colors.
black bits?
Magnetite. You can actually,
Oh.
if you put a magnet in there, or
Yeah.
you put something that does have can attract metal. If you put a pin in there, it collects the magnetite.
Interesting.
It actually has magnetic. So the greens are can be olivine or epidote. Oh, so I was going to tell you. Let me give you another thing.
Annie Lennox or Eurythmics.
I love Annie Lennox when they were the Eurythmics. That was back in the 80s. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think
It's
in the
been a while.
80s. Because we used to do our aerobics to that song.
Yeah, I used to be a big fan of the
Yeah.
Eurythmics and
Yeah.
Annie Lennox, and the Eurythmics was just her boyfriend, I think. I mean, he had some sort of Moog synthesizer that he did all the music on. But let me go back to full frame because I want to show you another another book that's been very helpful to me. This book is called A Grain of Sand: Nature's Secret Wonder, and it is. I'm not gonna say it's written. It's published by Dr. Gary Greenberg. Dr. Greenberg had this very funny career that started in biology, et cetera, but eventually he took an interest in the microscopic, and his brother sent him his brother was trying to convince him to move to Hawaii or go visit him in Maui, Hawaii, and so he sent him a film canister full of sand from the beach at Maui. And he was bored one day, and he put the sand under his microscope, and he found it just to be very attractive, very interesting, very beautiful. And so he started collecting sand from all over the world. He's already done what we're doing now. But in the process, he started inventing things to make it easier not only to see the sand, but to see objects of physiology, because he was, after all, a biologist. He was a doctor of biology. And so he invented the 3D Edge microscope. It's a microscope that takes pictures in 3D. And it gave a whole new perspective to medicine when he did that. And of course, he's rich and famous now. But along the way, he published this book, A Grain of Sand, Nature's Secret Wonder. And it's mostly pictures, right? It's mostly photographs. And it's broken down into 5 or 6 chapters that have been very informative. And I got this at Abe Books as well. So the chapter titles, A Signature Written in Sand, Erasing the Line Between Science and Art, which is what he was trying to do, The Nature of Sand, The Color of Sand, Shapes of Sand Grains, and Patterns in Sand Grains. So it's been very helpful for me to start understanding what I'm seeing in the microscope. And again, I bought that at Abe Books, Dr. Gary Greenberg.
We have a comment from Doug Carver. Says, man-made sand has too much dust, so it may get banned in Canada.
It produces too much. The process produces too much dust. And sand is really the best sand is silica. And silica dust, if it gets into your lungs, you know my sandblaster outside the garage? Excuse me.
See, this is what happens when you breathe in silica dust while you're using your sandblaster.
So years and years ago, back in the olden days, when you sandblasted, you actually used sand. But the process of sandblasting actually breaks down the sand and produces a silica dust. If that silica dust gets into your lungs, you're going to die.
It
Uh,
scars. It
it's-
scars you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so over the years, they've changed different things. I use a material called aluminum oxide, which
okay.
is not dangerous, and of course, which is sealed. I wear a mask when I do it, et cetera, et cetera. So I protect myself as much as possible. So let's go back and take a look at. So this is at the lowest level of magnification.
K-Pro says, sand varies so much on the coast. Are you wanting some from the same location but different areas?
You know what? The structure of the sand, the contents of the sand, can literally change from 1 mile of beach to another, and it's most distinctive in places where there are islands, like in Maui. In Maui, if you go onto the Kanapali, in 1 mile you'll find the olivine green sand. In the next mile you'll find red oxide sand, and in the next mile you'll find basaltic black sand. And so it changes. So yeah, if you can identify it, and that's why it's important to give us the geographic coordinates, or when you take your picture with your phone, make sure your GPS is off, because we're going to document that. I'm building a database on something called Airtable of all of this, so that people will have access to it eventually. So yeah, if you have different samples from different locations along a similar beach, even better. Rivers are fun, as you can see. Gary, or was it Gary? Andy Giles sent us that sample from the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and that's not beach, that's nothing. It's just a sand that is generated as a result of it being in the Pine Barrens. So, yeah, we're looking for samples all over, because what we're discovering is we have, as of this time, processed, as we call it, 4 different samples, and they're as different from one another as anybody could imagine. And again, if you go to the, let me put the. I can't put the link in the chat room. I will put the link to our photographs in the description box below, so you can check out all the albums and look at the differences, because I have put photographs of the samples. So this is at medium magnification, and as you can see, as Shelley asked about those black pieces, if they have a little shine to them, they're probably magnetite. If they're not, then they're a basalt. But it's hard for the basalt to get onto continental beaches. This over here, this green color, is an epidote, and the yellows are quartz, but they're just a colored quartz. Now, I don't know how many of you know about gems, but there's a gem that's very yellowish orange. It's called citrine, and it's actually quartz with a orange tint to it. So some of these are on their way to being citrine, because they do have some color to them. And then the last one is the most magnification, and I try to zoom in as close as I can. Now, the problem at this point is we're talking, you saw that photograph, we're talking very, very tiny pieces that have the color, and they're basically different stones that come from the mountains that are broken down. Now, the smoother ones mean that they've been processed over a longer life of time. The ones that have more angles to them are younger, if you will. So let's switch over to, I'm going to switch over now to the microscope. And let me turn on the light full light. And that's a live image, and that's at the highest level of magnification. And again, you can see a lot of different color in them, but mostly that quartz. And that's what, when I hold up those little sample jars, it looks the whitest, mostly because of all the quartz sample. I tried to zoom in on this because it looks like it's polished of some kind, but I'm not sure that's not just a reflection of the light. So let's take it in just a little bit. I'm going to go, that was...
One of the people on our membership chat last night offered to send Toby a little stage where he can move the sand around
Move
very
the sand
slightly.
around. Yeah, very slightly.
So we'll be looking forward to getting that by next week, perhaps.
So I sent her the USPS
The label, shipping label.
Shipping label. So you can see, again, different colors. Those to me look more like magnetite because they're very black because of the basalt. The red could be jasper. And again, I'm learning this like you guys are. But again, there's this very polished one right here. And I'm hesitant to move it because it doesn't take much to... Let me see if I can do this without...
Corey wants to know, is it lead?
Probably not. It looks too polished to be lead, and lead, whatever lead there is heavier. It has a higher specific gravity, so it's not going to be moved by the water as easily as some of these with a lower specific gravity. So you can see it. You can actually see if you're walking along a beach, the waves actually. I don't know if any of you have ever done any gold panning, but when you're gold panning, basically you're washing the water around so that the heavier things, what they call the black sand, which is just a form of lead, or metal, magnetite, is moved away, and the lighter stuff, like the sand, is moved in another direction. Well, if you've ever walked along a beach and you see a stretch of black sand, your first reaction is, oh, there must have been an oil spill. That's probably not it. It could very well be, but you can pretty well much smell an oil spill. But what happens is the waves actually have this sorting action, and it moves sand to different locations on the beach based upon its specific gravity. So lead, which may be in the water, there's not a lot of lead in the water because it oxidizes so quickly, especially with salt. Lead is so heavy that it never quite makes it up onto the beach in large quantities. I don't think this particular piece is lead. Now it's starting to look like it has a blue color to me instead of a silver. But let's zoom in just a little bit more and see what we can see. And we're not quite at our highest level of magnification yet.
Shiny.
Yeah, it does have a very shiny look to it, doesn't it? Very shiny look.
Where's your pokey pin? Maybe
Well, you know what's going to
see if it's
happen.
magnetite.
I do have the pokey pin, but it's really hard without the.
I know, but I meant just to touch it and see if it gets magnetized.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Let me try it with a pokey pin. See what we got time here.
Oh, you were close. It looks shiny black.
Oh, now I lost it.
Yeah, I think it's just shiny black. It's like a bird trying to get food.
Okay, yeah, you need some other device. You guys can't see this, but you could tell just by the size. And I'm still not at full magnification. That's what I was using to try and get in there. And now I've lost it in the process. So let me go back, and I want to take it into another level of magnification. And let's bring this down. And so I'm going to take it all the way in and then probably back it out for you. We'll just see. Now, the challenge when you're at this level of magnification is your depth of field. For those of you that are familiar with photography, your depth of field is very, very low. Low because it's effectively taking a shot with a macro lens where your depth of field, the distance between what's in focus and what's out of focus, is very shallow. Now, you can correct this by taking several pictures, and the way they do the Dr. Greenberg does it is he takes several pictures. He starts at the top with one in focus, and then he takes a picture all the way down. And then there is software, a piece of software. It's open source software called Picolay, and it takes the photos and all those photos, and it starts layering them into a single focus. So they're a single photo, so that they're all in focus. So let me see if we can move around here and see if there's anything else that's interesting. I'm sorry I lost that one piece because that looked.
I think it was just black and it was being real shiny,
shiny.
so the light was making it look silver.
So maybe if I turn this, it's easier. So you can see a lot of different colors. There's some epidote. The epidote is very different from the olivine in that it's green, but it's opaque. It's not transparent. But you can see the quartz in there is literally crystal clear. It isn't polished. It almost looks like you could take it, hand it to a diamond cutter, someone who processed diamonds into stones, and they could cut it. But of course, you're dealing with an object that's so small, there's no way you could get anything out of it. So there's something with a very different look. I saw one of these. They're called composites, and they consist of more than one type of sand that's been kind of bonded together. But you can see the sand grains are just so clear and so beautiful. It's hard not to admire them. I am going to be using I had a blue in here someplace. Let me see if I can get to it.
No, it's not rock candy. You're not supposed to eat it.
There we go.
Lapis?
It could be lapis, or that's a very blue, especially that one right there. Just the blue fringing on the edges has it. You know, it's very very blue as opposed to. I'm just backing it out digitally. So that's max magnification there. Now I could adjust the camera so that it was greater, but then I have to do all kinds of other adjustments to go with it. So again, we're just dealing with objects, with natural things that, when you look at them under a microscope, are really beautiful and interesting. And we'll continue to do this, use these mechanisms as a tool to promote the idea that we are consuming sand. I don't know how much you guys know about my background, but for years I was a journalist and documentary maker, mostly for the federal government. When I returned to New Mexico, I entered into a relationship with a woman whose name is Janet Bridgers. She's the president of Earth Alert, and we did two documentary films, one called Heroes of the Coast, and the other called Stories of the Spill. And the first one, they're both about the Santa Barbara oil spill that occurred in 1969, which is pretty much the genesis for the environmental movement in the United States. And you can find those. I should probably put links to them. Stories of the Spill was basically, we went back, we had images and photographs and video of that period when the spill occurred and how much damage it did to Santa Barbara's beach. And people got so angry that not only was it the genesis of the environmental movement, this was 1969 when people weren't talking about the environment, it was the nationwide genesis for the environmental movement, and it was also the genesis for the development of Proposition 20, the California Coastal Protection Act. And other states have taken, after that, other states have adopted that act for themselves as well. I know Florida does, for example, North Carolina does, and some of the states that are further north along the eastern coast.
AJ Rainville wants to know, would you be able to recognize any plastic in the sand?
You can if it's small enough. Now, plastic is broken down, and because it's actually much lighter in specific gravity, it gets pushed all the way up to the strand. So what I'm asking folks to do, you will on occasion see objects in there that don't look natural. We haven't had the opportunity in what we've done so far to find objects that are natural, such as pieces of sponge, pieces of
We did
coral.
see a little piece of seaweed in the
We
one
did see
that-
some seaweed. I actually got a
from
picture of it.
Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, I did. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can go back here for just a second. Hold on a sec. So I want to go back to, I don't know if I uploaded them. So we had some really interesting pictures from Prince Edward. I'm going to go back to the Prince Edward Island one. Let me see if I actually uploaded them. Because there were, I didn't. I haven't uploaded them yet. Hang on just a sec. Maybe I can do it this way.
To add that into your flow,
Yeah.
workflow.
So there,
Oh,
that's
what's that?
that is, I don't know. But as you guys can see, this is just an image right there. That is something very natural. That's not, and this came from the sample that Doug gave us from Prince Edward Island. So there was a lot of this. I didn't notice it until I got progressively closer, but there's a lot of these little natural, wormy looking, clear, transparent things. And I just don't know enough to tell you what they are. But let me show you this one. This is the one grain of sand also from there. So that's a single grain of sand and not bigger than any of the other grains. But as you can see, it's got this beautiful composite. Somehow they all stuck together, or when it broke away from the granite, it actually had all these other minerals in it, and it's broken down, and it's now a size of the grain of sand. So there are some very interesting and beautiful formations in all of this, and as we develop more and get more pictures, I'll add them. I will be adding these several pictures because I was playing around with it over the weekend. I will add these pictures to the photos that Doug Carver sent us from Prince Edward Island. Okay,
Okay.
so let's see. So Doug said C-class. There is a beach in California, and it's called Glass Beach. It's either Garbage Beach or Glass Beach. But it was near a Marine base, and the Marines would take their glass and they'd throw it. This is before people were being environmentally conscious.
Yeah.
And they'd throw it over the cliff and onto this beach, believing that it would go out. Well, what happened is it would break, and then the water would take it in, it'd process it, and it'd smooth it out, and then it would wash it back up on the shore. So not all, but the majority of surface on this particular beach in California is actually glass that's been polished by the ocean. And it's now against the law to collect that glass. So, like, you can't go there and pull it off the beach.
Okay.
And that's another thing I want to warn you of. Make sure that whatever beach you're on doesn't have any restrictions against collecting that. But, like I said, I discovered that if I go to eBay and just enter the word sand sample, I can get samples from all over the world, and I have already ordered and have received sand from White Sands National Monument, which you can't collect from the National Monument, as the person who had the sand said it was from Alamogordo, nearby White Sands. I also got some sand from that is from what's the sand dunes in
The Great Sand Dunes.
Great Sand Dunes National Monument in Colorado, and they did the same thing. And I got some sand from something called Shell Beach in California. I've also ordered some sand from Japan. They call it star sand, and it's actually made from some of these forums. And when we get that sand, we'll talk about forums. I can't pronounce it. It's a long word, but they shrink it down to forms. We'll talk about that when the time comes.
Well, Britt Chaser says he'll get us some samples from Wales.
Oh, that would be great, Britt, because it's got that would be the Eastern Atlantic, which would produce a completely different kind of sand. That would be great. And just send it to us at our address. The address is in the box below. And, I noticed that a lot of folks have been sending these size envelopes that you don't have to. You can send a small packet in a first class envelope with just a couple of stamps on it. We don't need much. As I showed you earlier, we're putting everything in those small sample jars. We don't need much more of a sample than what's in that jar. So if you put it in a small plastic bag, put that small plastic bag in a normal envelope. You don't have to. I don't want you guys spending dollars sending me sand. You could do it with a couple of first class stamps. Okay. Brit, of course, it's going to be different because you're sending us from the UK, so it's going to be a little bit more. Okay, I think that's it for the day. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes.
And again, if you have a sand sample that you'd like to send us, the
Imperial Sand Dunes near Yuma. Interesting.
Ooh, that would be great.
Fen Fan.
And we're interested in sand from any location. Like I'd like to we want to have a conversation about why we can't use desert sand for construction. So if you're near a desert sand source, whether it's in the Mideast or here in America, and you can send us that sand, we can have the conversation about why you can't use desert sand, wind-blown desert sand.
Well, the Great
in
Sand Dune
construction.
sand is like that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why it's there. It's because the wind blows it
Yeah,
around.
we'll be able to see the difference and
Yeah.
why it can't be used. We'll explain because it's too round and too smooth to be used in construction. It doesn't stick together. So we'll have that conversation
very fine.
when the time comes. In the meantime, there is a video. We have produced a video on how to collect and send us sand, and there's the address is in the description box below. And I will post some of the things. I will post the photographs to this particular one. I'll add the photographs. Actually, like I said, I'll post the photographs to the entire album set. So you can pick whichever ones you want to take a look at. And I'll add these photos to the ones that Doug sent us when he went. Okay? Anything else?
No, that's it.
Join us at 4 o'clock for the Softer Side. On the Softer Side, we'll be back at 7 o'clock this evening.
The softerside.live, starting at 4. That's in 15 minutes.
And we'll be back at 7 o'clock with a Gypsy's Kiss at gypsyskiss.tv. So join us then for discussion of the treasure that Forrest Fenn hid somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe. All right?
All right.
Thanks for joining us today. And
For World Sand Project, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Younis. We had a great time. Hope you enjoyed it half as much as we enjoyed presenting it. I guess half as much is not very good. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we.
Yeah, that's it.